The sun, a familiar golden disk in the azure sky, cast long shadows across the rolling hills of the overworld, yet Alara felt an unusual chill in the air. For weeks, a subtle unease had settled over the lands. Villagers whispered tales of strange, new blazes that seemed to wander further from nether portals, and the distant mournful wail of ghasts carried on winds that had no business touching the gentle plains. Ilara, a seasoned explorer whose pickaxe had kissed countless ore veins and whose sword had cleaved countless foes, recognized the tremor of something deeply amiss. It wasn't the usual ebb and flow of monster spawns. This felt deliberate. Her latest journey had taken her through a series of abandoned mine shafts, leading to a cavern pulsating with an unsettling, sickly green light. It was a faint, creeping corruption, not strong enough to harm her directly, but alien and unsettling. She'd seen the way netherrack seemed to bleed into the surrounding stone, and how even the native cave spiders seemed more agitated, their venom a brighter, more virulent green. This was no localized phenomenon. It was a tendril of the nether, reaching out, suffocating. The whispers of the villagers, normally dismissed as superstitious ramblings, now echoed with a chilling truth. The nether was stirring, not in its usual chaotic dance, but with a focused, malignant intent. Alara spent days preparing. Her forge glowed with furious heat as she hammered out a fresh set of diamond armor, reinforcing it with glistening obsidian for extra protection. A stack of golden ingots sat heavy in her inventory, not for crafting, but for a different kind of exchange. Potions bubbled in her brewing stand, fire resistance, strength, healing. Her trusty bow was restrung, arrows tipped with poison and instant damage. This wasn't a casual resource run. This was an investigation, perhaps even an intervention. The very fabric of her world felt threatened by the encroaching darkness. The journey to the ancient moss-covered obsidian portal was swift. With a deep breath, Alara stepped into the shimmering purple veil. The world dissolved in a swirl of amethyst light, then reformed in a blaze of red. The air hit her like a physical force, thick, suffocatingly hot, smelling of sulfur and burnt earth. Blood-red netherrack stretched into the hazy distance, punctuated by rivers of churning lava and skeletal forests of warped and crimson fungi. The familiar chorus of the nether greeted her, the distant shriek of a gas, the clatter of wither skeletons, and the guttural snorts of piglins. She kept her movements cautious, her golden boots reflecting the oppressive glow of the landscape. The gold armor, though less protective than her diamond plate, was a necessity. It was a silent flag, an offering of neutrality to the fierce porcine inhabitants of this hellish dimension. Her initial encounters were tense. Groups of piglins, their crossbows held ready, would eye her with suspicion. Alara would slow her pace, perhaps drop a single gold ingot on the ground as she passed. Their curious snorts and quick retrieval of the offering were the only acknowledgments. But something was different. Alara began to notice an unsettling pattern. Piglins, usually obsessed with gold and fiercely territorial, seemed distracted. Their usual boisterous brawls against hoglins were less frequent, replaced by skirmishes against skeletal figures that moved with an unnatural speed. She saw bastions, those formidable fortresses of blackstone and basalt, besieged not by other nether denizens, but by creeping patches of a sickly, purple-tinged fungus, oozing with an unsettling aura. This fungal corruption wasn't just a new biome, it was an invasive plague, devouring the very stone, empowering the wither skeletons that spawned from its depths, and even causing sections of the bastions to crumble. Peeking over a ridge, Alara observed a sight that chilled her more than any ghast's scream. A large piglin brute, its tusks chipped and armor dented, desperately fought off a surge of wither skeletons, their bone swords glowing with an eerie, dark energy. Behind it, a younger piglin, perhaps a shaman, attempted to fortify a crumbling wall. But the purple blight was spreading too fast. Aghast, its massive spectral form, usually a menace to piglins, flew erratically, as if confused, its fireballs striking indiscriminately, hitting both sides. This wasn't their normal chaotic war. This was a desperate struggle for survival. Alara made a decision. Holstering her bow, she pulled out her diamond sword, its sharp edge glinting. With a sudden burst of speed, she descended the ridge. Not towards the piglins, but directly into the heart of the wither skeleton horde. Her movements were fluid, precise. She sidestepped a bone-hard slash, thrusting her sword through the chest of one skeleton before it could apply its deadly wither effect. Another fell to a swift arc of her blade. Her presence was an unexpected variable, a whirlwind of steel and determination. The piglins, momentarily stunned, paused their own fight to watch. A particularly large wither skeleton, its frame denser and its glowing eyes more malevolent than the others, lunged at the brute. Alara intercepted it mid-charge, her sword meeting its bone sword in a clash of sparks. With a powerful shove, she sent it reeling, then delivered a finishing blow that shattered its dark form into dust. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of distant lava. The piglin brute, its breathing heavy, turned its head slowly, its beady eyes fixed on Alara. Beside it, the shaman piglin, a creature named Snout, lowered its hand crossbow, its gaze unreadable. Alara, still radiating the raw energy of combat, met their stares, offering no challenge, only a silent acknowledgement of their shared predicament. The purple corruption pulsed visibly on a nearby block, a malevolent heart beating within the netherrack. The brute, whom Alara recognized from prior, tense encounters as Grunt, gave a low, rumbling snort. He looked at the shattered wither skeletons, then at Alara's gold-clad form, and finally at the encroaching blight. His actions were slow, deliberate. He nudged a heavy, cracked obsidian block with his snout, pushing it towards a gap in the crumbling wall. Snout followed suit, indicating the path the blight was taking. Alara understood. They weren't asking for help, not with words, but with a silent plea for survival. The threat was too great, too overwhelming even for the formidable piglins. She pulled out a few more gold ingots, tossing them gently to Grunt. He caught them reflexively, his grip surprisingly delicate. Then, Alara unslung her pickaxe. With powerful swings, she began to chip away at the corrupted netherrack, creating a deeper trench, a barrier against the advancing blight. Grunt and Snout watched, then, with surprisingly coordinated movements, began to help, pushing loose blocks into the widening chasm, their snorts less hostile, more cooperative. For hours they worked, a strange, unlikely alliance against a common, creeping foe. Alara noticed the peculiar vulnerability of the blight to gold. Perhaps it was an ancient magic, or simply the antithesis of the Nether's dark energy. She used her crafting table, quickly assembling gilded obsidian, its golden flecks pulsing with a faint, counteracting energy. She showed Grunt and Snout how the gilded obsidian seemed to slow the blight's advance, even causing small portions to recede. Their grunts of understanding were clear. As the sun of the overworld dipped below the horizon, casting a fleeting green light through the portal, Alara stood with the piglins on a newly reinforced bastion wall. The immediate threat was contained, but the blight still pulsed in the distance, a reminder of its lingering power. Grunt let out a series of deep, guttural snorts, accompanied by precise gestures with his powerful tusks, pointing towards a massive dark structure, visible only as a silhouette through the nether haze. It was deeper, more corrupted, radiating the very essence of the blight. It was the source. Alara knew the implied message. We stop it together. She nodded, A silent agreement forged not in words, but in shared sweat and a common enemy. The piglins, creatures of greed and ferocity, had found common ground with an overworld adventurer. The next day, Alara, flanked by Grunt, Snout, and a small contingent of piglin warriors, ventured deeper into the corrupted lands. The air grew thick with a choking, sulphurous stench. The ground beneath their feet was a sickly purple, squelching softly with each step. Wither skeletons seemed to emerge from the very ground, their numbers overwhelming, their attacks imbued with a malevolent strength. But this time, Alara was not alone. Piglins, with surprising discipline, formed a defensive line, their crossbows spitting bolts of vengeance. Grunt charged headlong into the densest clusters of wither skeletons, his axe cleaving bone and darkness alike, while Alara moved with agility, striking at their weak points, using her potions to heal her new allies when they faltered. Snout, from the rear, unleashed bursts of fire from a specially crafted fire charge, burning away the encroaching blight. They moved as one, a symphony of disparate fighting styles united by a singular purpose. Finally, they reached the source, a colossal pulsating fungal mass, anchored to a ruined fortress. It wasn't a wither, but something far more insidious, a living engine of decay, pouring forth the corruption that had plagued the Nether and threatened the overworld. Its tendrils lashed out, summoning endless waves of wither skeletons. The battle was ferocious. The ground shook with the impact of their blows. Alara used her pickaxe to hack at the core, while Grunt and the piglins distracted the endless horde. The air was filled with the clang of steel, the thud of piglin axes, and the agonizing shriek of the fungal mass. Just as Alara felt her strength wane, Grunt, with a final mighty roar, slammed his axe into a critical nexus of the fungal core. With a hideous tearing sound, the mass began to wither, shrinking, its purple glow dimming. The wither skeletons, deprived of their source, crumbled into inert dust. Silence. The air still hung heavy, but the oppressive pulse was gone. The purple blight still stained the netherrack, but it no longer spread. The source was neutralized. Grunt let out a triumphant snort, a sound of victory, not of aggression. Snout looked at Alara, its beady eyes holding a flicker of something akin to respect. They had fought together, not as enemies, but as brothers in arms. Alara, exhausted but resolute, made her way back to the portal, the piglins silently watching her departure. She carried no new treasures, no rare ores from this journey, but something far more valuable. A silent understanding, a tenuous but crucial pact forged in the fiery depths of the Nether. The overworld was not safe from every threat, but for now, the looming shadow of the spreading blight had been pushed back, and in the heart of the Nether, a new kind of peace, born of necessity and shared survival, had begun to bloom between the most unlikely of allies. The balance of the worlds was delicate, always shifting, but sometimes a whispered snort and a shared swing of an axe could forge a bond stronger than any obsidian.